Hey, welcome North from North O2 to my podcast. I'm excited to have you on here today because, first of all, you are making some amazing content with your work, your channel, North O2 online. It's are on YouTube. I came upon your work because you covered some of my research on your channel, the old copper stuff. So it got me to looking through your channel and I was amazed by how accurate and the level of detail research that you put into all your subjects. And not only that, that was just the technical side, but you were getting millions of views. And I wrote down a list before I have you on here because you have 393,000 subscribers, 149 videos with titles like Homo erectus, Ancient Humans, which received 4.8 million views with the title, people, Homo erectus. The next one is you did a video on the Neanderthal Odyssey that got 4.7 million. Homo habilis, these are the titles. Homo habilis, it's another ancient human, 2.7 million. And then one of my favorites, which I watched this past weekend, just because I wanted to see how you covered it. I'm interested in the subject of Homo floresiensis, and that one received 1.7 million views. For the people out there north here, he doesn't even have a degree in geology and or anthropology or archaeology. He is 23, 24-year old from Wisconsin who is working on his marketing degree. So it's just amazing to me that this early 20-year-old from Wisconsin with no background has put together these videos. And if you haven't seen his channel, North02 on YouTube, if you are into those kind of topics I just talked about, these are well-researched, current, highly detailed, and they're done in a way that's not cheesy with just nice voice narration, no cheesy music, nice visuals and what have you. So that was a big introduction for you. And I just want to know how did you start this? Like, what got you into making videos, these technical videos as a person with no background in geology and archaeology?
Yeah, well, I think I've just always been interested in just like the past and topics. Like it's amazing to me, like a lot of like fairly basic questions about human evolution or like prehistory or stuff like are just not taught in school, and the average person like has no idea. Like I remember one of the topics that always fascinated me just as like a kid, and I was like, no one's ever told me anything about this, was just like human skin color. Like no one ever, a lot
Mm.
of people don't even stop to ask like, oh, why do people have different colors of skin or hair or eyes or anything? And I just remember like looking it up and I found the answer. I mean, it was present just on Google or something, but I was like, no one I know even knows why that is. So it's just
So
kind of
when,
crazy. Like a lot of these basic questions that just like got me excited about learning about and then a lot of it really goes back to prehistory, like anything evolutionary related or yeah. And then I got into like human ancestors and learning about like Homo erectus existed for like 2 million years and went all over the world and interacted with all these crazy animals, which my next video is on. So
hmm. And how old were you when this interest started to peak? Like, and then like, when was the first video posted that you would call a North O2 style video?
yeah, I actually had to look. I don't remember. You were saying that some of the views on those videos, and I didn't even, I don't know, I don't
Yeah,
really check it often. So I was like, really?
this was
But
this morning current.
yeah, wow. I guess, so my first one was 6 years ago. So I was in like high school when I made that. I think trying to think back, I was just kind of inspired by, there's a few other creators at the time doing like that kind of style of content where it's just like your voice and like you kind of make it look nice, like presentable, like a documentary. So I think that's just where I started off. So, and I was really covering like more animals at the start because
Hmm.
I was interested in more like that's like paleontology. But as like my channel went on, I just found that I was way more interested in like the human story, like what humans were doing. And and yeah, just really like hominins have been like the topic of my channel for the past 3, 4 years. Just like, I mean, it's so fascinating to just think about like Neanderthals and Denisovans and these other hominins that have been around just as long as our species has. And we even have, their genetics in us as well.
Or even longer, really.
Yeah.
Some of those, yeah. Um, Neanderthals had a long run on Earth before
Hmm.
they were interbred out or whatever. But yeah, that stuff is fascinating to me. And so, as this person in high school, how did you have like parents interested in this? This is all just from working or just watching YouTube that you like got this interest in like skin color and all this, and then that led to the first video in high school. Like, what kind of software did you use, and how did you do it as a
I had
side
made
project or school?
videos. I've just made videos about a bunch of stuff since I was like a kid. Like I've just kind of always done that, but like I wasn't really serious about it. And then I realized like if you cover topics about science and history, there's unlimited video ideas and content, and then people are inherently going to be interested in them as well. So that's when I was like, oh, I can actually, and I just like to watch YouTube in like all kinds. So I was like, oh, I could be a YouTuber and make. But I would also say that I was inspired like the actually having like a backbone in terms of like scientific research and like your sources and stuff. That was inspired by like maybe one or two YouTubers who were like going that route, like actually like putting due diligence to their what they cover and stuff like that. So I'm really glad that got inspired by that early on. Otherwise, I might be making Gobekli Tepe conspiracy videos or something like that. Like, glad I didn't go down that route.
Do want to cover that later. You do purposefully rely heavily on the literature, like scientific literature, and you do avoid these. I wouldn't even call them fringe theories; they're really just baseless ideas that seem to be permeating the thought sphere of ancient history and what have you. And I still want to stick on this channel thing because I want to hold on. I do want to get into that with you because, yeah, I think they're amazing how much research you put into your videos and the genetics and all that without any background really is amazing. So, but when did you monetize the channel? So you put your first video up 6 years ago, you're in high school, and then how did it grow from there?
Well, I mean, it was a pretty slow start. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I remember getting like 0 views and like 10 views, and I posted all over Reddit and stuff like that. Like, I don't know, it's easy to see a big channel and see like million views, 100K views, but I remember how depressing it was to post the video and get absolutely zero. So it's just, and back then, I think YouTube was actually kind of harder back then. Like, I think now they're kind of propping up smaller channels, which is good. But back then it was like, you are just banned to just, no one's going to see it for, yeah. So the first like year, the first 1,000 subscribers was very hard, as it is for everyone, I guess. And that's, these days it might, I don't know. I haven't started a channel in a long time, so I wouldn't know. But, oh, and in terms, I guess, monetization, I think back then you just got monetization if you started a new channel. You didn't even have to like reach those requirements at the time. So that was nice, I guess.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that
Yeah.
about. So just let you do it right first. Oh, that's cool. And so since then, have you been basically doing this as your job? Like,
Yeah.
do you
I've been
have?
doing this as a job since probably junior year of like high school. I mean, I definitely wasn't making much money at the time, but I was like, I know I could if I keep going. So,
So
but
you've just been.
yeah, so I've just been doing YouTube for years. Yeah.
This is amazing. We are looking at a real YouTube and like content career you're in the beginning of your career, like doing this. Like this is crazy. I
It's
I
funny to
mean, yeah.
it's funny to like talk to my friends like or like family or anything. They like forget, but I forget. I don't know. It's just weird because now like a YouTuber has become such like a kind of weird, not weird, but I know content creators kind of have like a stigma like, oh, he's a content creator. But
Mhm.
like, I don't know, I don't really make content in that kind of way. Like, I mean, I'm not even really in it. So it's just kind of like a little thing I do. I don't know.
Yeah,
But it is
yeah.
my main job. Like I plan for it to be once I graduate. probably want to go back to school and get some archaeology actual experience and expertise. But otherwise, I want to just continue to make videos and documentaries and stuff like that. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's so cool. And like you're doing the degree for the people that are at home. You're in a marketing degree. So you were already making science-based videos in high school. Then you go to college and you chose marketing. Why didn't you choose science, like a science
I
degree?
chose mechanical engineering, and that lasted like 2 weeks before I was like, I don't want to do that. I wish I would have chose anthropology or archaeology now in hindsight, but at the time I was like, all right, I'm just gonna do a business degree that like I know will work and won't be like super hard. And then of course my school doesn't even offer archaeology or anthropology. So like 2 years ago I would have switched too, but I was like, well now I'm already 2 years into my marketing degree. So yeah, that kind of stinks. I might just do like get like a 2 year anthropology, archaeology, just like some formal training. Hopefully, do like some field work just so I like understand the field more and get a little experience. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think, surprising, like your YouTube thing goes as a business, you get a marketing degree. So that's definitely complementing the business aspect of this whole thing, which
uh-huh.
no scientist is good at. And that's actually a benefit from a science documentary filmmaker. But I would definitely recommend 2 year degree, like a master's, and then do a field school. Because that's
Yeah,
really the thing is completing a real field school, and then you kind of cut your teeth, or whatever the saying is. You actually get field, you see how it's done in the field, archaeology. And a 2 year master's, if you do it, you can do it over 3 years. It doesn't sound like you have much of a pressure. That's definitely doable. A PhD though,
but yeah,
that's like, I tell people it's kind of like getting married. It's like a lifestyle
really,
choice more than because it just takes so long. And then once you get a
yeah,
PhD, your life is sort of a project. At least that's how it's been for me. Like one project after the other. Like you're never going to get away from writing papers or studying.
yeah.
And
It's
yeah,
interesting.
so it's a lot of work,
Yeah,
to say
that's
the
what I've heard.
least. So you you and I have connected because you made some old copper culture documentaries on your channel, and that's kind of like the research that I was doing. This like geological research, studying the lake sediments, and we were finding these signals dated to the archaic with the old copper culture, and it just kind of complemented your whole work on the archaeology of the artifacts and the culture and everything like that. But that's how we connected, because I commented on your video, and then you found me on LinkedIn, and so we've been just talking about doing experimental stuff, archaeology and all that. And recently you've been showing me, you've been doing a lot of old copper culture, like you've been making artifacts basically of old copper culture style. And we've been talking about the advantage of using fish hooks in the old copper culture, because they were centered around the Great Lakes, upper Great Lakes. And there it is.
Yeah,
And we kind of speculate that how did these people support their society way out in this Great Lakes, this Lake Superior, out on these islands where they're mining like Isle Royal without any agriculture? And one idea is fishing. One thing that would definitely help somebody in a deep water environment like Lake Superior would be having nice hooks, both in the summer, ice free, and during the ice season. And copper would make amazing hooks, but would it? We don't really know. We see these copper hooks out there, but do they make really functionally more efficient hooks than other things they could find out there, like bone and lithic? And here, North has been on the ground doing this. I'm like, and it's amazing. And you've had some success. So I'll let you talk about that. So yeah, so show that again. You made an actual, you modeled that after a actual real old copper culture. So this is archaic, between 2,000-3,000 to 8,000-9,000 years ago in the U.S. That is one of the old copper culture replica hooks. And so did you just use wire, or did you pound that from a nugget?
yeah. So this was from just, I think it's wire. I just buy copper because I make like, I also got like right here, this is like an Utsi, the Iceman replica axe I casted. So I just buy a lot of like copper to do that. So yeah, I think this is from like a kind of thicker wire. I haven't like pounded it out like how like Larry Fro does it. Like I've done that actually once or twice, but like this, I just had to make a bunch of copper hooks for that project. And I mean, there probably is some differences between this, like the structure of it if you were to make it like that. But yeah, essentially this is just copper. And then I just hammered every surface because when you hammer copper, cold hammer, it gets harder. So
Yeah.
I hammered like pretty much every surface I could to try to like, like to stop bending. But I mean, if you get, I can just grab it and watch this. Like I can just open it up like that. But I mean, that is still a lot of force. But I had a lot of doubts going into actually fishing with these because I've done a decent amount of fishing of like fishing for sturgeon and fish that like you throw a hook like this down with some bait and then they come along and they eat it and then, you pull them in. And like usually you use like a steel circle hook that, I mean, pretty much looks exactly like this, except it's made out of steel. Luckily, I just sturgeon fish anyways because it's fun. But I was like, oh, I can apply this to, the copper culture. So I went out and I spent like a good amount of time fishing this year for sturgeon, and it's been an unlucky year. But yeah, the other week I was fishing and I have 3 rods out. One of them has a copper hook, and the 2 other ones have steel hooks because I'm just trying to catch something at this point. Like, please, like just so I can prove I can do it, and then maybe I would put all the copper hooks on. So I was out there for probably 2 hours. It's dark outside and rainy and cold, and then I get like a hit on one of the rods, and I'm like, all right, let's go finally. So I start fighting this fish, and like it's a hard fighting fish, and I'm like, oh wow, like this is kind of hard. And then I get it in, I finally pull it in, and I'm like, oh, that sucks. I didn't catch it on the copper hook. And then I turn it over, look at its mouth. It's got this copper hook hanging right out of its mouth. And like I was mind blown. I got the footage of it luckily, so that'll be in a video on my channel pretty soon here. But funny enough, the copper hook actually did straighten out a little bit. It was probably like kind of like this in the fish's mouth when I saw it. So I'm so lucky that it stayed in the fish's mouth because that could have been ended poorly. I mean, it taught me a lot about like copper hooks, and I need to see some real examples and get some real measurements on like how thick they were because a copper hook this big was able to pull in probably 10, 15 pound sturgeon or 20 pound sturgeon or something. So I imagine if you just make them a little thicker or larger, like you could pull in even bigger fish. But the fish I caught was, I mean, plenty big. Like I'm sure like that would feed a whole family for a day or something, or a few days. So
Hmm.
something I also learned was I snagged a lot of these copper hooks. And, usually when you snag like a steel hook, it just breaks off because they're so hard. But copper hooks actually straighten out when you're trying to get them unsnagged. So it's actually pretty useful. But that's something you might look for in the archaeological record, honestly, like hooks that were straightened out from getting snagged, or I don't know. It'd be interesting to learn more about. Like, I need to find someone with a bunch of copper hooks. I only have to see pictures with a few of them, and they're all kind of bent into weird shapes and stuff. So, I mean, a study on fishing hooks from the old copper culture would be really interesting.
Yeah, there's a big gap there. People been doing research on the old copper culture technology, like for the viewers out there. I know but they've looked at mainly projectile points in knives, I believe, and whether or not copper makes functionally efficient tools for projectile points or knives. But no one's actually looked into whether copper makes more functionally efficient hooks. And this is compared to bone and lithic technologies, because those are the other stone and yeah, bone technologies or antlers to make anything else. So does metal make better stuff is what we want to know. And it seems like no one's looked at the hook question. Yeah. And like, how do you need to get some measurements just to see, like, if the hook's going to straighten out a bit, could you anticipate that with a barb? And so when it straightens out, it like embeds a barb in it near the end of the hook, or, things like that could maybe be employed so that when the hook sets, it kind of embeds itself in a different way than if it was rigid. I don't know. I'm just guessing on that, but that's the kind of work that needs to be done. Because I do think like you might be showing for sure. Could you have caught that sturgeon on a hook made of any other material available to archaic period people in Wisconsin? Any other, like with wood or bone, you think is easy as that hook?
I think, see, I've never worked with those hooks before, and I would guess that they're strong enough to be able to pull in the fish. But honestly, what you just made me think about is how, like, if this gets snagged, it's not a big deal. You just pull it out and you'll keep the hook. But if you snag a bone hook or a wood, like composite hook like that, I can't imagine that it would break if you pull on it. Like that hook is lost. So honestly, that could be a part of the equation of like why like an advantage of copper hooks is that like they're recoverable if your like string is long enough, strong enough. And also like I was saying how my hook bent during the process, but I still caught the fish. So I'm sure there's some like if the fish shakes its head, maybe it bends a little bit, but it's still there. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's some kind of test you could do with like 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 shock absorption or I don't know. I've really not thought about all the details of what like a study would entail and like how to test like organic hooks versus copper hooks, but I just imagine there's so many benefits to copper really
Yeah, I
compared
think
to
you're,
organic
yeah.
hooks, I guess.
Hmm. And the ones I've seen, like the nice bone hooks from like the Pacific coast and out in the Pacific too, on the islands out here, they're for catching big fish. Like we've talked about these little, I mean, comparatively, the musk or sturgeon's big for the Great Lakes, but when you're out in the ocean, sure, yeah, you can snag a big tuna with a hook that's the size of your hand. But when you're in an inland lake and you're out in Lake Superior, these fish species, their mouths are a lot smaller. So you need smaller, durable hooks that aren't as easy to make with those materials. And when you make something like that, you said they're brittle. So that's soup. That whole thing is interesting. So that's another thing to consider is the recoverability, the snagability. Even if you snag that hook in weeds, it could maybe straighten the hook out if you pulled it hard enough and recover it through weeds. Because I've seen plenty of people lost plenty of fishing lures and just weeds. So that's cool. Those are the kind of questions that need to be looked at with that technology. Someone needs to be just out doing the field test. So I'm looking forward. So you have footage of pulling in this sturgeon. How big was the sturgeon you said?
I think it was like um I have a measurement actually, but I haven't like looked back at it, but I think it was around 3 feet. And it wasn't like too thick of a sturgeon. Like, I mean, it was probably around 15, 20 pounds. You know, for science, I probably should have measured the weight of it, but I had to get it back in the water and I didn't have a scale. I
Yeah.
mean, if obviously I'll have to do more like, I'll have to make more like standardized hooks and then like actually record the fish a lot better. But yeah, I mean, it worked and I have the footage of it working. So that's just
And
going to be good for the video.
yeah. Maybe even those underwater under ice cameras, if the lakes ever freeze again,
Yeah,
you
if
can
they ever do.
you can maybe mount a camera under the ice and get some good footage of hooks because it's so hard to get, yeah, like getting data on how these things actually function in a controlled enough manner that you can kind of make some guesses. I think maybe having hooks too and pulling up weights of different at different weights and then until the point where it like straightens out and then measuring that compared to the thickness of the hook or the amount you anneal it and then hammer it and maybe get an idea of strengths and then use bones to pull up the same weights. And if they break, and then you're like, oh, like it has a shear strength of this or something like that. Could be a way to test it, but that's still not good because it's just weights in the air and that doesn't have anything to do with like tracting fish. One thing I'm thinking when you said the copper got hit and not the two steel hooks, could copper attract fish? The color of it, I don't know. I mean, usually most lures are more, you know, chrome colored, I guess, because it kind of mimics the scales on minnows and everything. But I have seen copper spoons for big fish like pike and northerns. But yeah, they're always usually painted more like chrome or gold
I
color.
think copper is pretty, I think it's a pretty common color. Like I've made a bunch of fishing lures and, you know, spinners and a lot of the blades they offer on the market are copper. I think copper is I think some fishermen might have to correct me, but I think you use it in like murky water as copper has advantages, or like you use a gold spinner or spoon in murky water rather than in clear water. I'm pretty sure. So I think that's what copper. Yeah, copper is definitely used in lures for that. I think, but someone might have to correct me.
That's another a part of the equation for the functional efficiency, because how well you can catch fish might not only depend on how durable your hook material is, but it may also be, does it repel or attract fish, or is it neutral? And if you have a hook that's has baited and the hook itself is attractive, I mean, you may not even need to bait it in some cases. Like if you make a spoon with a hook attached to it, like we do, there's no bait, and that alone tracks the fish. So that's another part of the equation that could be experimented with in the field that you couldn't do with just weights and like sheer strength and all that stuff, because that's also built into it. And what they would have used, they would have never used the copper for hooks if they realized, for whatever. Imagine in the world like copper repelled fish, because it does repel slugs. By the way, copper is like anti-microbial. And one thing you can do is, if you have slug issues and you want to be organic, put copper wire around your garden, and the slugs will not crawl over it. And it also keeps fungus, mildew doesn't grow on it. It's antimicrobial. And that's one of the reasons why all these old artifacts we find around the Great Lakes, you still find organic matter embedded in the copper, because the copper basically is antimicrobial, anti-fungicide. It kills everything when it weathers into that greenish oxidized look. It protects that organic material. Imagine for whatever reason the copper just repelled fish, and it clearly doesn't. Then they would have never used it as a hook, even if it was the best like technical material, the most malleable, right? That's what I was trying to get at. And so that had to have been part of the equation, had to have been a good enough material to use and not at least repel fish to be a hook.
One thing
So anyway,
I've been thinking about, I think I've told you that about this, is like a lot of times I've seen this in videos from, like, I think I sent you that. It's like the Tuk 2 films of like the Inuit in Canada. And it's just like films of them like doing their hunter-gatherer activities. And one of the things they'll do is they go to like a ice fishing hole, and they still do this to this day. And I'm sure a bunch of other people do too. And you go to an ice fishing hole, and then you dangle down something that looks like a fish. Usually it's made of bone, but I think some of them could be made of metals too. And just something that kind of shiny, and the fish will come up, and it doesn't have a hook on it. It's just for the fish's attention. And then you spear it from there. And one of the things I want to test this winter is using I've said this to you, yeah, using those spears, like the fish spears. They're called like Leicester spears. I don't know how to pronounce it. But it has a spike in the middle and then two hooks on the side. And then, you spike the fish, and then it grabs onto the fish. So I'm going to make one of those out of copper, and I have a lake right in front of my house. So I'm going to be out there for like hours until I spear a pike or spear whatever comes up. So I will when you look at like assemblages of these copper artifacts, there's a bunch of these just like strange bits of copper that, we'll probably never really know what they're used for. They might just be scraps, or who knows, but they could have certainly used those to attract a northern or like a predatory fish and then spear them or something. Because I mean, that's still something like my family does in the winter is, they go up to the ice and then they dangle down like a big looking fish thing. And my grandpa would always do it. You throw down a big spear right into the pike's back, and then you have northern in the winter. So I think like those spears might have been used. You imagine they would use them in like a river or something, but I bet they were using them in the winter too. Midwest lakes everywhere, Lake Superior. Like I just imagine ice fishing was probably like a big part of their like subsistence strategy. I don't know. I mean, it's something we should definitely look into.
I agree. I think the ice question, adapting to that environment, would have been finding a way to exploit those ice lakes. I mean, they lived in one of the, everywhere. There's so many lakes in Minnesota and, in Wisconsin, that if you were living there and you weren't able to exploit what was in them in the winter, it would be unfortunate. So I think, and also that thing, that the spear you mentioned, it has these hooks that are on the top of it that do resemble, in a way, just hooks that we would be attaching to string if you didn't know what you were looking at, because there are those subtle changes in the way it's bent. And those are the questions like that need to be done with, measurements and everything, because there are those two types of hooks. I've seen them out there. Sometimes I see those hooks that look like the spear ones, and then I see the ones that are clearly they have like a little eye hole where there was a string attached, and it's like, oh, that was definitely attached to like some kind of string. And unfortunately, if you're using these in environments like lakes, in the ice, and this may explain why we don't see very many artifacts on the ground today, because if they were lost during use, they were lost in the water. And so if you did have like tons of like a copper fishing lure or hook, you're gonna, I think, find more of those in the water. And we're just, no one's looking there except in the shallow areas. So this might explain another reason why, the so-called missing copper myth is all over the internet. There's just like, where's all the copper? Where did it go? There's these huge mines. And if you just tell people, it's like, hey, they're finding like to this moment, this day, this month, that copper artifacts are being found by people around the Great Lakes. They're everywhere. And in Europe and other places, if they find like one copper knife at a site like 4,000 years ago and like a scrap of like some other piece of metal, it's like, whoa, a copper dagger from 4,000 years ago, where in someone's backyard in Wisconsin, they could have like a dozen just from the lake around their cabin or something like that. But and on top of that, I think we're missing the majority of them because they're all at the bottom of the lakes, the most of them, because that's probably where you'd have been losing a lot of hooks and a lot of fishing gear that these people would have been making, in that time. So to me, that shows that we're underestimating the scale of that old copper culture. It was huge, and there was a lot of copper moving around for a long time. And we are just beginning to understand that. So people can go that route. Like they can go the route of, hey, all these archaeologists are lying to us, and I'm going to just make up some stuff for nice clickbaity YouTube titles. But you decided that you're not going to go that route. You're going to go the high road, or I shouldn't even say that. I hate you're not going to go that. You're going to just stick with what's out there in the literature. But, you also want to get millions of views. So you don't want to scare people away necessarily, or make videos that people don't want to watch. So how do you balance, when you're making these videos, how do you balance like the research with the engagement, like in the video? Do you have any tips, or what did you find out since you've been doing
Definitely
this?
it's something like that is like one of the main things I think about. I mean, and it all goes back to like my videos are scripted. Like I write out a script and then I make the video. And like I feel like I've done it long enough that like I have a sense of like, all right, I've gone 5 sentences without mentioning like something cool, like a arrowhead or or like a cool fact. So it's like, all right, I gotta throw something in there to like get the interest back, I guess. Like, so I don't know. It's definitely something I think about a lot. I mean, every video is different though. So, but just honestly, like one of the main things I feel like that helps my content do well is just like, you just learn something new that like you hadn't even considered. Like my last video, like the extinct animals encountered by Neanderthals. It's like, what? Like Neanderthals lived next to hippos? Like you would never have thought of that. For something to be interesting, I think it has to be new and novel, but like also build off of something you already know. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a super important thing for all science communicators when making content, is like they have to be familiar enough with the topic to be like, okay, I know like what you're saying, but it has to be new enough to where it's like, what? Like I had no idea that that was the case or that was true. But I think people really find conspiracies are kind of just like, it's just like it's like a quick high of like brain, like, whoa. But like when you know something's like actually like true, it's like I feel like you consider it a lot more deeply, and it's more meaningful. So like, I don't know, just something about like knowing like, oh, this is in this paper and I can read it and this is actually for sure like true. And especially when we're talking about really ancient stuff, that like that definitely I think helps the audience's interest.
I like the way you put that. You said it a lot better than I could have said it, because I say maybe I see it like, if you look at some of these facts on the ground and you really get to the science, sometimes it's more fantastic than fiction, but sometimes it'll be so far outside someone's wheelhouse. Like you're saying, they have to be familiar with it in order for it to just even stick. Like, Neanderthals encounter these huge hippos, like these, megafauna hippos, right? I believe. And people know what a hippo is. And they're like, oh my, I've seen like those videos of the hippo opening its mouth, and like that was your thumbnail. I saw that. And like that at least like, whoa, I wonder what that's like. But then you have things, but that is kind of cool. But like, one interest of mine that I thought you covered was the Homo floresiensis.
Floresiensis.
Yeah, floresiensis. I always butcher that.
It's hard to say.
You probably practiced it for your video.
I did.
So that one alone is like more fantastic than science fiction. And it could be real that some of the dates, a person I want to get on my podcast is a guy that wrote the Between Ape and Human book, the anthropologist that went to Flores, and he initially went there. I started the book. He went there to study the people and their culture. And part of that was this understanding, I'm going to, I'm really paraphrasing, but they had this like myth of this jungle man. And he went there to kind of just understand the culture and the mythology around what they'd learned. But over the course of time of talking to people, he realized that the jungle man, this person, this being that lived in the jungle, might be real. Have you heard of this story? And that some of these older people in these villages, based on separate interviews, independent interviews over like decades, but how they described this person in the jungle matched up. And then a few decades after, this is like 70s and 80s, and then like the 90s and early 2000s, they find a skeleton in a cave in Flores in Indonesia, and it's a small bipedal hominid. And they thought, hey, maybe this is a deformed person, or maybe just there's this dwarfism idea. When you get on an island, sometimes big mammals shrink and small animals get bigger. But no, it turns out, long story short, that this is a separate, probably species of human that existed on this island up until, I think the dates are solid to like 50,000 years ago. And correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
there has been some like maybe earlier dates that even put it up to like in the thousands, if I remember right. But then this guy, this anthropologist, claims that at least maybe historically up until the 20th century, perhaps if these just anecdotal accounts are true, this other species of human lived side by side with humans. This is greater than a science fiction movie. And it could use tools, at least back in the archaeological record when they find those evidence suggests they used tools and fire, and was bipedal and about a meter tall. And the myth that the people in Flores talk about is that these beings would come out, they lived up in the caves, like they said, in the hills, in the jungles, where, by the way, orangutans thrived up until recently, another big primate, up in the trees, though. And so, that's evidence that big primates could live in these environments up until recently. They would come down and like mess with them and steal their food and other things and raid their villages. And they had like a primitive language. They had big feet, they said. And that the archaeological record suggests they had big feet. That's one of the things that the anthropologists noticed among all these independent anecdotal accounts was they mentioned the size of the feet. How would they know that? Like, that is strange to me. So that one right there, and you did a good video on it. It's got 1.7 million views. That one right there it's crazier than science fiction. If any of that is true, even up to 15,000 years ago, if they were up till 10,000, 15, 20, that means we definitely had two species of humans living side by side in Southeast Asia, 100%. And what would it have been like to with your friends hanging out. What do you think? And you're walking over a hillside and you come across another group, and that group is on two legs, but they're not human. That would have been wild to me. That I would just love to see someone do a good documentary on something like that with like really good special effects. So, but yeah, what do you think about that?
Well, there's so much.
Or even coming across Neanderthals or something. Jeez, man.
Well, I mean,
we know that
Southeast
happened
Asia,
too.
yeah, Southeast Asia in general, I mean, was home to, they have the latest surviving Homo erectus lived there until at least like, what was it, 100,000, 104,000 years ago, I think are the earliest dates. And, Homo erectus were around for 2 million years. So that's crazy. They're still around there. And then there was Denisovans, we know, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the genetics point to Denisovans living in like island Southeast Asia. So even though we don't have fossils really of them, we know that genetically it suggests that they lived around there. So that's another hominin. And then you have Homo luzonensis from the island of Luzon. And that was also another smaller hominin. I really don't know too much about that one. I never made an ancient human on that one, but
yeah, I'm not even familiar with that.
Really? Yeah,
no.
Well, there's really not much out about it. So that's why I've kind of been waiting for hopefully more information to come out about it. But it also seems to have been another small, I lived on an island. I mean, Luzon's a pretty big island, but still they had like a smaller stature. In the Philippines, I believe.
Well, I need to look that up.
But yeah, Homo floresiensis, as far as we know, it only lived on that one island, which you can look on Google Maps. It's not extremely large, but I think the dates of 15,000 years ago, I don't think that's necessarily accurate. I think it might have been reported initially, and they later found out that they were closer to 40 or 50. I'm not entirely sure, though. I haven't looked at this in a long time. But, I mean, I don't think any researchers would really doubt that they could have survived on Flores for a lot longer. Like, I think the remains are pretty scarce of floresiensis in general. And, like, it's really that, like, it's an island, like, environment in Southeast Asia. So it's like, I remember reading about how the bones they excavate there are literally like paper mache, like, consistency when they get them out of the ground, because they're just in just a really wet jungle environment. Like, it's not, and even I might have even have read that they're not even, some of the materials not even like fossilized, like it's just in the ground. And I don't know about I'd have to learn a lot more about paleoanthropology and that to like know exactly like how that's excavated. Okay, another point I wanted to bring up about like the myths of little people living in the hills. I think, unfortunately, it might not be as interesting, but I think that could even be referring to other native people that might have been present on Flores for a long time because of. So do you know about the Polynesian expansion? So like the model is called like out of Taiwan. The Polynesian people moved from Taiwan to all these islands and ended up like colonizing a bunch of places, and they displaced the native Negrito people, as they're called. And those are the people you see on like the Andaman Islands or like North Sentinel Island. Like they're typically smaller in stature and they have like darker skin. They're Asian people, like genetically, phenotypically very different looking. And I know that at least on Taiwan and some other islands, or a lot of other islands, like the Polynesian people kind of showed up, and the native people who were living on the coast had to retreat into the hills because the Polynesian people took all the nice farmland on the coast and stuff. So they had to retreat to the hills and live out there. So I think maybe it's possible that the Flores, maybe the myth of because even in Taiwan, I think those people ended up going like kind of extinct. I don't think they're around anymore, but they had like myths of little people living in the hills too. So it's possible that the Flores myths come from that, like placing. I think Flores is home to Polynesian people. I really don't know, but
I don't
could have
think
been displacing them.
No, I think Flores could have had the Andaman people, but I don't think Flores had Polynesian settlers.
Well, I'm saying who lives there now.
Yeah, I think now it's just Indian, like probably. I don't know, actually.
So I think that's a result of the Polynesian expansion. I don't know the history of the island of Florence, but that's just Flores. But
Flores,
that's
yeah.
just kind of the general like history of the region I know of. So that could be what that's pertaining to. But I like the idea. Like it's and honestly, as science communicators, we have to be like open to like try to like say these kind of ideas like it could have been Homo floresiensis. I mean, that's one of the things that the Graham Hancock kind of thing, like he suggests these like other like really cool possibilities, which is not inherently bad at all. And we definitely shouldn't like not even be closed-minded, but like we should be imaginative, but then bring it back to like, ground it a little more. So, but I think it's perfectly fine to mention like, yeah, on Flores, like they have these legends of these little people with big feet apparently. And like there literally were hominins that were living there. And who knows how, like, we could find
Yeah.
dates, much earlier dates. And, people's memory goes back a long time. Like in Australia, it's confirmed that people had myths of the sea rise going back to the last ice age. So 10,000 years that's been in there. And imagine a bunch of little people living in the hills. I mean, that could just become like an old, like an old wives' tale, like, hey, don't go into the hills or the little people will get you. So like that,
Yeah.
I could imagine that would stick around for millennia, So that's super interesting. I haven't heard of any of the work really from this guy, so I should actually read up on that. But
Yeah, it's Gregory Fourth, and hopefully I would like to get him on here because I know that is a fantastic claim. In his book, he does at least the beginning of it kind of say, I know this sounds ridiculous, but I went down there and talked to these people, and from what I gathered, it seems like they're describing the same thing, and it's not a symbol. It's a literal being. But yeah, I think but you're saying though, I is definitely more probable that these are humans that lived in the cave, probably displaced people, and that served as this myth, the beginning of this myth. And you do find these like small people inhabited islands myth a lot of places, like you also said. So I think that is more likely scientifically, but at least from the standpoint of making interesting science subjects, the speculation is at least grounded in some kind of evidence that, man, at least maybe up until less than 50,000 years ago, we could have been living with different hominid groups in Southeast Asia. Like to me alone,
for sure.
that is just a crazy thought. And that's real. That's a real thing that happened. Like modern humans lived with other bipedal hominids. And I think it's just those are just one example. For in the copper one we brought up like earlier, everyone wants to speculate on this missing copper, even though there's like the bigger story that should be on the front page news is like millions of ancient copper artifacts dating back to 10,000 years ago can be found. Maybe hundreds of thousands, but let's just say millions could be found around the Great Lakes. Does anyone know that? It could be like 1,000 people from the UP be like, yeah,
Yeah,
I know that.
literally.
And otherwise they'd be like, they were all loaded up in cargo ships and taken over to Cyprus. That's the bigger, like, that's ridiculous. And then the other thing is these videos, I'm still getting comments on that the copper is coming from like the Phoenicians in this trip to Cyprus and other things like that. And then the video and my material shows that it's way older than all those cultures. So this is more ancient. So did it register that that's probably stranger than just saying it came from the Phoenicians? No, it's not. So science can be more fantastic than science fiction. If you look at it right and do it right, it definitely can. I'm glad that you're taking that route because it's clearly working for you too. So when you're making these videos, how do you do you have any metrics for like evaluating, like what feedbacks have you taken to refine your video approach to make it more palpable to the viewer, I guess?
For me, it's
Because you
largely
cover really hard topics. But yeah, so this for the people that don't know, you cover extremely technical topics, and these videos are long too. So yeah, how do you evaluate feedback and from the viewer, and what have you learned to like in your recent videos to make them better?
I mean, for me, like the editing for basically every sentence I say in a video, it's like different imagery. It just helps to keep the viewer engaged. And I mean, it does explain the topic as well, but like just like my format of like highly edited video is just inherently way more like digestible to like the audience. So I think that's something I certainly benefit from, but also, I mean, I wouldn't say I dumb down any topics really, but like I try to explain it because I'm not a archaeologist who like knows how to like precisely say all these like really complex terms about this or that, especially like genetics. Like I can understand them and then explain them in like terms that I would understand as like a layman. So I think that like relatability definitely helps me with the audience. So I think just like, yeah, like I was saying earlier, it's like you have to be able to describe something in something that the audience knows, but you have to describe it in a new way that makes them go like, oh, like that's how that works. And people, well, what was the
Mm,
phrase? It's people love to understand, but they don't necessarily like to learn because learning's hard. It requires you to like think and like I don't know,
mm,
change, but like under just being able to understand something is like rewarding. Like it makes your brain feel like good, but learning is kind of, you know, whenever, especially if you're, for me, when I think about like studying a language, I'm like, oh, my brain doesn't really like this, but like I'm going to do it because I want to learn more about it. But understanding is definitely a super important aspect of just like talking about a complex topic or teaching something new
mhm.
about something, keeping them engaged. Yeah.
When I'm teaching, I'm always trying to come up with like little stories or sentences that can like help someone just understand a concept rather than having to like painfully learn it. So that's cool that you've that's definitely helpful when considering what I'm trying to do here is get people on here to get them to talk about highly technical subjects in a way that makes people understand it rather than feel like they're having to learn it. I also think that your voice, you have a nice voice for these
Too.
documentaries. I mean, if you were maybe had like a British accent a little bit there,
Oh,
you
I'd be
could
Graham
maybe,
Hancock. I'd be on top of the world.
but I have seen like several people have commented on your videos, like your voice, North, is, I love this. Like there's not, it's like, and it is too. You put it on, you could like hear in the background and your voice is like so calming and you say things in a way that's like really just, yeah, it's not offensive to the ears in any way.
I definitely have like a
That does,
video voice too. Like my friends and everyone who knows me, like they'll like I don't necessarily talk exactly how I do in like a video. Like I have like a, you know, like a performing voice. I don't know, it's kind of funny. And it is weird to think like I get so many comments like, "Oh, I fall asleep to this guy's videos every night." And I'm just like, that's kind of weird. Like it's kind of weird. Every night there's like hundreds or whatever thousands people listening to my voice to fall asleep. I don't know. It's just kind
like,
of a surreal, weird thing.
yeah, that would be weird to think there are like maybe hundreds of people or thousands every night with like your voice in their
Yeah.
bedroom, just talking about like Homo
I
habilis.
don't know. It's kind of funny.
That's awesome. And like, so what do you want to do with your channel now? Like, so you built up this following. How do you envision like the next year or 5 years for you? Do you have a vision or are you just like shooting from the hip?
I have like, I kind of honestly have like my next like 10 videos already planned out. I mean, that changes, but I can just take a look here to think about. I want to do more videos, definitely like filming. Like I'm gonna actually appear in my videos more often now that because I'm gonna be done with college. Like I don't appear in my videos usually because it's like I'm not gonna film like this, like me in my room. Like I don't know. I really like think about like production a lot and like I don't want to just like throw myself in my videos if it doesn't like fit the overall tone of it. But anyways, I want to appear in my videos and I have like videos like I want to make a video about like the spear thrower and I'll be like in it like throwing spears, like talking about it all and like the same with archery and just like actually appearing in my content more. And then just like I want to make kind of more smaller videos now because that last stretch of videos I did like an hour 26, an hour 58, an hour 15, an hour 48, like those videos suck to make. Like, I'm gonna be honest, like it's so draining and just like not rewarding at all. Like the last video I put up was only 25 minutes, which to me isn't big at all. And like that was just like so much better to like edit and make. And it's just like the current landscape of YouTube is like you kind of need to be not pumping things out, but you can't do a video every month and a half like I was doing before. So I'm gonna be doing I'm gonna try to do 2 videos a month from now on, like smaller videos. And I'm working with an editor now and all this stuff. So I just want to put out more content, basically, like get out there more and just honestly more digestible content too, like stuff that like the common person who has no understanding of this kind of stuff, like that Neanderthal video I just posted, like you didn't even really have to know what a Neanderthal was because I explained it in the beginning and then I explained, you know, all the animals they ran into and stuff. So yeah, I kind of want these topics to just be more like popular. Like I just want the average person to know what a Neanderthal is and what they did and all that stuff. So that's kind of my goal, really. But obviously, I still want to cover nuanced information because that's also what makes me like gets my brain going is like learning a bunch of new things that I didn't know about. Yeah, so I say that would be the direction for my channel, really.
And unfortunately, science keeps going on, so new discoveries come about, and that's, like you said, automatic material. That's kind of what's inspired me a little bit with this is like, I'm just excited about being able to contact people, like have a reason, legitimate reason to contact people that do interesting things that I'm like been following either on social media or their papers, and just being able to be like, hey, can I talk to you about what you've been doing or this paper you put out because that sounds interesting, and then like be able to record it and put it out for the record, and at the same time kind of um, helping the communication problem we're having in science, which is scientists don't want to communicate mostly, especially the older ones with like social media. So they're just kind of stuck in this world of these papers that just aren't getting out there. And then that leaves this huge vacuum that people come along and sweep up and fill in the gaps and do the communicating in their way that may not be up to up to the current understanding. So yeah, it's we need people out there that are willing to just adapt to the 21st century. We have to communicate what we're finding so in a way that people can actually take it in and not feel like they're smart enough to understand it. Like these papers are difficult to read, like a genetic paper with the amount of lingo. Whereas if you could just get the person that writes that paper onto an interview, you could be like, well, tell me what's going on here. And like, what did you do? And how did you, like, so then that means this. And then maybe it'll be a little bit more digestible. And hopefully also inspire younger people. Like as an educator, that's what I want to see high schoolers like watching my stuff. And I want to see like younger 20-year-old people watching my stuff because they're going to be the ones that maybe if we need another generation of scientists, like we need to get those people interested in it in the right way. So like you're doing a good job on that. And the best part about this is you're just a guy. I'm not like just a guy, but you're a guy that just makes videos on these technical subjects with none of these backgrounds. You're not like an Oxford anthropologist who's like, I really taken this upon myself to, summarize these for videos. And you've done it yourself, even in high school. So, man, I don't think I could have done something like that. And I think I would have just been like way into actual conspiracy theory.
I feel like I honestly went through that phase like in like ninth and like 10th grade of high school to where I was like, I was like into like Graham Hancock and like all that kind of conspiracies. And then I think, I don't know, the more you learn about it, the more you're like, wait a second. And then I don't know, once you get past that phase, you're like, oh, okay, the science is definitely way more interesting because it's actually real. I don't know.
Yeah. And you said in the beginning of our talk, you said there were two people, content creators that inspired you and shaped your direction towards a less conspiracy fringe channel. So who were those two creators? And like, what did they do that inspired you and convinced you?
I'd say there's definitely a few, but the most, Trey the Explainer. I don't know if you're familiar with his channel.
I'll take a look.
he makes, I believe he is an archaeologist, and he like I think he doesn't, it never really says what he actually does, but like, I think he's like a geneticist maybe too, or like an archaeologist and geneticist. I don't really know, but I had watched his channels like all through high school, and he just like he would what caught my eye was when he would cover like cryptids, so like Bigfoot kind of stuff, like Mothman, and just blatantly pretty fake cryptids. But he would like go into the stories and then like actually investigate them really heavily, and then like use like science and like just like a really logical approach to like understand why these people might have been saying they saw this or that. And like I think that honestly, he gave me like a helped me get like a skeptical, science-minded approach to things. And he would like mention research in his videos too. And like in high school, like obviously sometimes you have to like use a research paper for this or that, but you don't really even know like anything about how like the scientific field works. Like even in like science class, they never really taught us like go to Google Scholar and then this is what how to read a science paper, like and he also made a lot of like anthropological content too, like about ancient humans and like cave paintings, I remember. So he was definitely a big inspiration to like my interest in free history, I'd say. And then other creators that are, I mean, honestly, kind of contemporary with myself as well, like Stefan Milo and now Mini Minute Man, if you know him, Milo Rossi. And there's a couple other creators that like just do a really good job at like kind of advocating for like if you're going to believe in something, you need like science to like justify like or just back your claims. I mean, it sounds so simple, especially to us talking, but like most people will be like, hey, I heard that a comet hit the earth and ended civilization 11,000 years ago. And you're like, well, where's the evidence for that? And you're like, this guy with a British accent said it to me. Obviously, I'm simplifying that there is actual science behind that. In their mind, they're just like, oh yeah, no, I don't know. Like, it's so easy to just say things these days, and it's just true. It's like I'm right unless you prove me wrong. It's like, wait, that's not how this works. Like, the burden of
Or they'll
evidence is
say,
on you.
I guess I'm just contrarian. It's like, no, you can just, your guess, you're also just making stuff up. Like, that's also what you're doing. Like, sometimes it's like, you know what? I know you got that evidence, but I just look at things differently. And then you're like, well, I guess that's it. And I see a lot with the ancient history people that have been really getting popular lately is they confuse speculation with evidence. And a lot of coincidence, a lot of interesting things, linear alignments and perhaps sun alignments, solar alignments, whatever coincidences could be real. Speculation, though, you can add it all up. And at the end, if it's all speculation, you just still have speculation. Evidence is different. Evidence are measurements. Evidence is like a physical object. Evidence is skeletal. Evidence is, written records. And so that problem, the public, I think, for people watching is just get a firm understanding when you're hearing someone talk to you is are they just speculating or are they giving you evidence? Because sometimes you can get a bunch of evidence sent to you and you go, okay, now person, speculate on what you think explains all that. And then they'll try to piece together all the evidence. But you'll know, okay, that way they interpreted that evidence is separate from the evidence itself, that what they had actually showed you, because interpretations can change, but hopefully real results, real evidence is that. And it's like evidence, like you found a piece of its obsidian geochemically traced to Crater Lake in Lake Huron. And there's no way glaciers could have done that because they didn't slide that way. So that's evidence. And that was just a paper I talked about with Nate, which I looked up later, which piece of obsidian from Crater Lake. I had it wrong on my last one. I thought it was Yellowstone, but they geochemically traced it to Oregon, and it's in a deposit that's dated at 9,000 years ago in Lake Huron. Yeah, so in the Great Lakes. So that suggests that obsidian, if they're right, it was being traded all the way from the West Coast by 9,000 years ago. That's like, to me, I mean, that shows that there's intercontinental trade by basically the end of the Ice Age. And like, it's like, there again is another interesting bit of like, that's a piece of evidence and then maybe you could, Yeah, there's things you could speculate, I guess, on that obsidian flake. So, but evidence is different than speculation. Speculation, I think even Graham Hancock is like, when all the speculation lines up, there's something there. And he does bring that up, I think, in some of his interviews, which he does say he is a journalist, not a scientist. He does at least preface it with that. But yeah, he does stuff that speculation. I mean, it's really almost all just speculation. And then he's like, this, all my speculation leads to this idea of this lost ice age civilization. And speaking of that, the sea level rise after the ice age, you are aware it's on the order of like 120-meter rise, right? Till from about 18,000 years ago till about 6,000 BP. And depending on the shape of your shoreline, it would have come up. But one place that the shoreline moved a lot based on just the bathymetric shape of the basin. And I don't know how people say it, but the Persian Gulf, where the Euphrates and Tigris empty out, that whole area, sea level rose up until about 8,000 years ago. And all the Sumerian culture, the oldest ones are along the shoreline. They're dated to 8,000 years ago. Do you know about this?
No, I haven't heard this at all.
This is real research. This is real research. So sea level rose rapidly from 18,000 to 6,000. And it's slowed down at 8, if you look at the curve, and it all depends on the shape of your shoreline. But that Persian Gulf area, if you look at it during the Ice Age, look at the Persian Gulf versus the Ice Age versus today. And it would have been this oasis.
Oh, wow,
that's why
yeah.
it's really, yeah. And that shoreline shape was completely different. And so it rapidly rose and it got to that modern shape around 8,000 years ago. And they talk about a myth of people coming during the founding of Sumeria. And I know the experts out there might be like, I was doing a little bit of research on this because I do want to bring the real archaeologists who has worked on these sites along the coastline there. Because like right there shows, it's feasible that the earlier versions of the Sumerian culture, they had built their sites in this area of the Persian Gulf, which would have been an oasis during the last glacial maximum. And they just were displaced during the sea level rise. I mean, you don't have to have a global unknown culture. That also forms a hypothesis that people could be, if there are sites, then they should be under the Persian Gulf. And we should be able to theoretically find them and date them. And they could be dated to 15,000 years ago. This is all within the scientific realm. And this does tie in maybe some sort of ancient ice age or close to that. But all this, you don't need a meteorite. You don't need to say everyone's ignoring you. The literature is out there. The paper that is out there there is no evidence in the Persian Gulf shown in the paper I saw. But it is pretty strange right off the bat. All the old ziggurats, the oldest Sumerian sites are 8,000 years old. When the sea level stops at their site, do you think? Or do you think it stops and they start building stone structures at the shoreline? I think it stopped rising. They built the stone stuff at the shoreline. So that's just another way we need science communicators out there that are able to find these stories to maybe talk about these little subtleties that you don't necessarily have to invoke these widespread theories. And then on top of that, there's no evidence, like even if there was some kind of earlier people there, that they were traveling across the Atlantic and going to Easter Island and all this. Like, I don't know if they actually say that, but we need like people to find those stories so that they can actually talk about that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think so asking like open questions like that, like, I mean, like Graham does a great job at like being like, can be a good job if he asks like, well, could it have been this or could it have been that? Which is like, I think those kind of questions are actually good because it gets people interested in, but then you can't, I don't think you should like build off that speculation. Like he like will incorporate that speculation as if, yeah, right. You're saying as if it were evidence, where I think he's doing a great job in actually saying like opening people's ideas to like, this could be true. And like, we should think about this, but then you can't go on and like after that and like, it is true. Like that's basically how he frames it. So
yeah,
I don't know. I've like been studying like Graham's like rhetoric and all that stuff for like a good amount of time, just because it's like clearly he does a really good job at getting people interested in like archaeology. Like he kind of got me interested in some archaeology, I guess. And it's like, um, I just think in this day and age, we should be able to like work with whatever he's doing right. We should be able to figure that out and be able to employ that in a more like down to earth scientific mindset, I guess.
I agree. And Graham, if you do happen to watch this, I want to say I have had many students that have been inspired by your work. And you are doing a good job getting people out there excited about somehow ancient history, which on top of that is like very obscure topic to get people interested in, but somehow rose to the ranks of getting Joe Rogan to have you on his show, writing books like Fingerprints of the Gods. Yeah, like how did you? It is amazing. He's sold so many books and inspired so many people, and yeah, it's just it gives me hope for like if I want to look on the bright side and not be, too and just be objective as I can. It gives me hope that people are interested in this stuff. And this is like why I'm kind of started the channel is like, wow, I did not realize that, there are people out there that want to see this stuff. There's like a demand for it. And even if they're in their living room, like if it's approachable and they can understand it rather than feeling like they're learning it, then they're going to watch. And I'm like, so he even maybe in a way helped me, inspired me to start this actual like channel to talk to scientists and content creators out there, like working on ancient history and other stuff like that. Yeah. So Graham, thank you for your ability to get everybody excited about your work and in this, we should talk about this. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. Dun, dun, dun. And Nathan had somebody on there. I think that was on the camp of the Younger Dryas impact theory. If I'm right, he was on one of the papers. This is an interesting one. This is a polarizing one because I'll say there is evidence of an impact. There's, if I remember, osmium in the Greenland ice core or platinum increase, maybe. It's not just like speculations of like rock carvings and alignments of mounds or anything like that. And there are some anomalies in iridium in some sediment cores that are dated to that. And whether or not that iridium is actually a real measurement is up to. My long story short is appears to be some scientific evidence for an impact. Whether or not this impact caused an ancient ice age civilization, that is speculation, to go extinct or to spread across the world is a totally speculation, totally, absolutely unfounded speculation. But man, has this polarized the scientific community, because I have personally seen evidence that I think looks like to be what I would say an impact marker with the iridium layers in some of these sites actually do look. I mean, the iridium layers for the KT boundary, and everyone said there was no way there was a meteorite till they found the crater, and that was the dinosaurs. So, and that's how long it took for that. The meteorite theory for the dinosaurs, people were hated for a while. And there's still some question on that too, by the way, whether or not. So it always gets hung up though on, I think there could have been a meteorite impact, a small carbonaceous meteor that broke up in the high atmosphere, perhaps maybe impacted the ice sheet. I don't think there's beyond that. I don't think there's anything you can really say. I think there might be evidence that it wasn't a non-explosive impact, is one person's put up that those in, and therefore that explains like why it doesn't leave a crater and it wouldn't have left this ice age civilization extinct. But there is this big mystery of what caused Younger Dryas too. It's clearly a reversal in temperatures, but what triggered it? Was it just an ice dam breaking randomly and dumping water into the North Atlantic, or was it destabilized with a meteorite? I don't think that's out of the question, but man, scientists hate this meteor. I was at a meeting and I saw somebody's record and they showed huge fires in the Younger Dryas in their core from Southern California. And I was like, is this support for the Younger Dryas impact theory? And I swear a person in the crowd at the meeting started laughing out loud. And I'm not saying, I was like, I'm just asking. And then he showed the evidence that the nearby site didn't have that burn layer. And there's another couple other number of reasons why he didn't think that was the case, which were all good enough for me. Just asking the question, people laughed about it. So what are your thoughts on that Younger Dryas impact theory? And do you have any thoughts? Are you going to cover it in your videos or your
Well,
channel?
I have covered the Younger Dryas.
Have you?
Yeah, like a year ago or over a year ago. But wait, was the paper you were just mentioning? I might have covered that too. Let me find the script of the video. Was it pre-Younger Dryas megafaunal extirpation at Rancho La Brea linked to fire-driven state shift?
That wasn't the paper, but that was a kind of question that inspired my question. It was like those papers that show these big fires at the Younger Dryas boundary. And I don't know, I haven't done the literature review, but I do. It was like those kind of papers.
From the paper that I read, that I made the video about, it was showing that like huge fires occurred in Southern California before the Younger Dryas, like quite a bit before during the Bowling Ellerod, right? Because that was a warmer period that I guess had a lot of fight. I think it was just naturally there was a lot of wildfires during that time. Humans were around, but this study showed from so it took a bunch of fossils from the La Brea tar pits. I think this study is really important for understanding, like, it's not as easy as just saying the megafauna went extinct at 12,800 years ago. Because as like a lot of people think is like all of these animals just immediately basically vanished at that date. But clearly it's a lot more complicated than that because animals, they're animals and they tend to survive things and move around. Like there's dates for horses and mammoths in the Yukon 8,000 years ago. And they can even tell that these populations were really small. So like clearly a lot of them had gone extinct by that point, but they're still around. And so this study looked at fossil, because the La Brea tar pits has so many fossils. So they're able to actually like statistically correlate like what was happening and like not population size necessarily, but like, the frequency, because things I guess tend to get stuck in the La Brea tar pits at a pretty like steady rate. Animals ended up there at a fairly steady rate. So anyways, this paper looked at the animals and also correlated it with climate data to like just try to understand the ecosystem. And so it found that the last dates that these animals appeared in the La Brea tar pits was actually during the Bowling Ellerod before the Younger Dryas. And it showed that these animals had all been declining during the Bowling Ellerod, way before the Younger Dryas even happened. And it also found that the youngest dates for Smilodon, the American lion, the dire wolf, western horse, and Harlan sloth ever recovered. So, and those dates are all before the Younger Dryas. So, and the Younger Dryas was a long period too. It was like 1,000 years, right? It was something like it was a fairly long
Close to
period.
that.
So it might not even be correct to say that they died out during or even at the start of the Younger Dryas, because the youngest fossils are from the Bowling Ellerod. And like obviously some populations would have survived. But basically the paper kind of made the case, I believe, and I could be wrong. So if the authors are watching, I hope I'm getting this right. But it was basically like the climate of specific, because this is one environment. Like the Southwest United States was becoming a lot drier, and then a lot of fires were happening, which was destroying all the old growth vegetation that supported big animals like mastodons, ground sloths, and in turn, those animals supported the carnivores, right? And so it was basically making the case for that, like after this ecosystem was largely destroyed from droughts, which caused the fires, that this was before humans too, or before humans were in the area, according to the study, really. And so it was really an environmental like degradation that ended up even the start of the Younger Dryas, it was like, I have to find the picture, but it was like just coyotes and smaller stuff. Like it was already kind of like Holocene, like fauna was moving into the area. So it was kind of showing that like the megafauna, like the story of the megafauna just in North America is super complex. Like these animals are still alive and kicking probably in the Pacific Northwest and other ecosystems, but in just this one environment, like there was clearly something going on. Droughts were affecting these populations. So even if hypothetically somehow if the meteor came and caused all the megafauna to go extinct, whatever. Like they were clearly still, they went like locally extinct in the Southwest United States, at least in this region, due to environmental factors. Like humans weren't even in the area really, I'm pretty sure, as what they suggested. So like, I don't know, it just shows you how complex, and just the extinction of megafauna in general, like it's so complex. Like cave bears went extinct due to human pressure like 25,000 years ago. And that's not even, it wasn't even necessarily related to like any like big climate event. It was just like humans were just a lot of competition. So when we're talking about like the younger
Mm.
Dryas impact hypothesis, it's not as easy as being like, oh, the megafauna all went extinct here. So that was definitely caused by, like, I don't know, like a lot of people, a lot of comments I see, just like the amount of nuance involved in the topic is so high that it's like, it's hard to even talk with somebody who might be on like the other camp, because it's like, there's so much to talk about or mention in the first place. Like my video on it's like 45 minutes long. And like I covered all of the data from like the microspherules and the like all the impact proxies and all the, and just like trying to put the Younger Dryas in perspective to like the other events. It was, what are they called? They're DO events. I forget the whole, you
Yeah,
might know that.
Dansgaard Oshgar cycles.
Yeah, and like the Younger Dryas was kind of correlated to like, it was like 20 other ones in the past 100,000 years or something, if I'm saying that right. Oh,
There is, and maybe like you're saying, it was a part of a larger like oscillation or variability in the climate system that was occurring. It might have been like an extremer version of a
yeah,
geo cycle or something, is what you're saying. And yeah, there are other like rapid, maybe smaller magnitude, but still rapid climate change events from that glacial maximum to fully interglacial Holocene conditions. There was about like a few rapid kind of step functions in there. Younger Dryas is just one of them. So, and I think it was, I would say, probably from the evidence, like in Greenland ice core, one of the more severe of them in that time period, Younger Dryas. But like you're saying, it's so multifaceted to explain the decline of the megafauna being caused by that, because there are pockets that existed after them. There's different environments that climate change doesn't happen uniformly across the world. It's amplified in polar environments. Tropical environments are always hot, always sunny, and it affects ocean circulation, which affects precip patterns and monsoon strengths. And the sea level change brings the ocean closer to inland in a lot of places. That changes. So it's just there's so many nuances in there to and to make any kind of causation between the Younger Dryas itself, whether or not it's caused by a meteorite. We don't have to even go there. Whether or not that the Younger Dryas cold reversal, which is in the record, and there's evidence for a rapid cold reversal during Younger Dryas, clear evidence. That cold doesn't, it's not good enough either. So we don't have to go to the route of the meteorite causing it to even say that. And so yeah, and then on top of the climate change, I think a bigger factor, especially for North America, is the spread of humans. The places where humans, Homo sapiens, spread after the Ice Age, the megafauna had a hard time. Like in Africa, they kind of evolved alongside bipedal hominids, and these were the megafauna found today. I don't know if this is a theory that people know about or if it's real, but then like in places like New Zealand and North and South America, humans show up fairly late in the geological time period game. And when they show up, things go haywire.
yeah,
New Zealand is very clear evidence that they
yeah.
cause megafaunics. I mean, there's fires across North and South Island at the time the Polynesians show up, and the big flightless
The
land
MOA
birds go
birds, or
extinct.
yeah,
Yeah, it's just gone. And that's like another one that could be a science fiction movie. Imagine you're canoeing up, a science fiction movie built on reality. Look at this new island. What is this? This is beautiful. And it's just a few hundred miles off the coast of Australia that we didn't even know was here. And you get on the beach, you start doing your stuff. This gigantic raptor bird,
12 feet tall or something.
12
Yeah,
emerges out of the forest. You probably would have shit your pants. They'd have been like, oh my. But they might have
jackpot.
seen like, yeah, they might have seen emus or ostriches before. And so they may not have been totally unaware of big, tall, flightless birds out in the world, but that would have been experience to see those things. Basically raptors almost, from what the skeletal remains, like big dinosaurs. So yeah, you have the human issue, you have the climate change issue, and then that climate change issue too can be multifaceted with droughts and all that stuff, changes in monsoon strength. Imagine the southeast or southwest United States had those huge paleo lakes, like Lake Bonneville and even the Great Salt Lake, all through the southwest U.S. during the LGM. It was a wet place, big lakes. Today it's a desert, uninhabitable. So if you did have megafauna in there, when it shifted to that desert environment, I have a hard time believing mammoths would have survived well in Arizona or they're close, other big land mammals when it turns into a big desert with no lakes. Or if they are there, they're salty. So we talked about this in Nate's channel too, which is the 20 to 23,000 year old footprints in the dried out lakes in New Mexico. To me, that one, I want to get them on this channel too, to talk, if I can get the authors of that paper on this channel, because that blows my mind. I thought they first published those dates and then they're like, no, there's the whole hard water effect and the dates are too old. And then they had another paper and they're like, no, for this reason, these dates are good. And from what I gathered, I think they have counted for that hard water effect, and it's like dead carbon, and it's true. And to me, the wildest part about that is it's in the desert of New Mexico. We're not talking about the shoreline of Oregon or even the shoreline of South America. If you picture the ice-free corridor is crap, but they came along the coast. You would think the early sites we'd find would be on the coast, which they are in South America. I think Nate brought that up. Some really early stuff is in South America, like 18,000 years ago. But to find freaking footprints in the desert of New Mexico 23,000 years ago, that means people are in the interiors. They're fully invaded North America by 20 to 23,000 years ago, or very closely thereafter. And what kind of pressure would that have put on megafauna? We know they start going down after that, after the, 18,000 years ago or something like that, the big mammals in North America, that is. It's very complicated stuff.
I do want to mention, one of the things I've been thinking about in regard to like human arrival in the Americas. Obviously, it's a huge topic. And I've been thinking recently, and this is just an idea, like obviously it's supported by some evidence and scholars will mention it, is that and it's totally possible is that people came to the Americas, 30, like 1,000 years ago, like a long time ago, and were like a relatively small population and lived there and maybe made the footprints at White Sands. And if you came before the last glacial maximum, you could just walk right into, like there was another ice-free corridor before the last glacial maximum, and you could just walk right in. One of my last videos, I talked about the Yana site, in that people were adapted to living in the Arctic Circle 30,000 years ago, like completely adapted. And they were hunting mammoths. They were living in excess for sure. They were eating mammoth tongues for like fun. They weren't even eating the rest of the bones or like the rest of the meat. So I think the idea is that people might have come in earlier to the United States, to the Americas. And then this population, though, didn't leave a genetic trace in modern Native Americans. Because I think a lot of the Native American genetics tells us like they came over like, within that almost Clovis range, like less than 20,000 years ago or like 18,000 years ago. I'd have to look at the genetics again. But so the idea is maybe we're looking at multiple populations, because there's cases like the Inuit, the Dorset culture or whatever before, like they didn't leave a genetic trace at all, even though we know they lived there for thousands of years. So it's possible that there were older populations in the Americas, and then they just didn't leave a trace in modern Native Americans. I think that led to so much confusion, because the genetics were clearly like, all right, like Clovis first might be plausible with genetic evidence, but then, then we got the older sites, and then now we have the old, like 20,000-year-old footprints. It's like, well, something's going on here. So no, I think that's a really interesting possibility. I definitely don't think there's enough evidence to really mention it, because I don't know. Yeah. Like, and we know dogs were brought over in that range too, like along with like there's just so much to talk about there. I feel like.
Yeah. this is interesting speculation.
Yeah, right.
And this is, I think, based in real evidence that you're speculating there could have been a population. This would explain why we don't see it genetically. And that's definitely a possibility. I don't rule it out either. I mean, I think that's probably explains why we don't see the genetics there to support it. And I think there could have been a population in North or South America that just genetically didn't leave a trace. But that leaves another mystery out there. And maybe we'll find more evidence for some reason why that is, or
And people will say the Solutreans don't.
or the Solutrean.
Yeah.
No,
No. I definitely did not say that. I made a whole video about basically why the evidence probably doesn't support that. But even in that video, I mean, like, you got to be like not open-minded, because that's such like a buzzword, I feel like, for like pseudo people. But it's like, hey, it is possible that the Solutreans crossed thousands of miles of frozen ice, eating seals or fish along the way, and then came, waited 5,000 years, and then somehow taught Clovis people, who we know genetically were the ancestors of Native Americans, how to do Clovis flint knapping. Like, that's the argument. And like, it is easy to just be like, that's so ridiculous, like that didn't happen. But I mean, some people, there's researchers who are completely convinced that that's true. I feel bad for getting his name, but like the main Solutrean hypothesis guy, who's like an expert flint knapper, and he's like, hey, the Solutreans were doing the same, like, it's way too coincidental for it to be different. And it's like, I feel like I've learned enough to learn that I don't know enough to like say that's ridiculous. Like, hey, anything is kind of possible, but obviously the Solutrean hypothesis is extremely unlikely.
Yeah, that's another way to put it too, is the likelihood of something is you can rank likelihoods as best you can, and if it's low on the likelihood, you could still say it's low.
Like, yeah, how many,
from what you can gather.
What is it? Occam's razor, pretty much. Like, for the Solutrean hypothesis to be true, it's like there's so many crazy things that would have to happen. I don't know. Like, yeah, that's a whole nother topic. But
cool.
Bruce Bradley, that's the guy's name, I believe.
Bruce Bradley. Maybe one day you'll be on this show if you publish a new paper and it looks good. I'll bring you on here to let you tell me everything you think.
He was on the Prehistory Guys podcast, and that's like, I listened to that and I was like, oh wait, this is actually a lot more reasonable than I thought it was. So that's like one of the reasons why.
Really?
Like, yeah, like, I mean, I know like other researchers don't agree with his conclusions, but
yeah,
like, he didn't seem like he was just like, you know, this to be true. Like, he explained like in all the reasons, like, hey, like, this is why. So, and he's like really into he's a really good archaeologist. He's really into the archaeology of like pre-Clovis sites. And you should listen to that, because it's really cool how he describes like some of these Clovis and pre-Clovis like workshop sites, and just like what they were up to. Like, pre-Clovis is another thing that's so interesting, like all those sites. Yeah.
In the spread of agriculture across Europe from out of the Central Asia and like the early Holocene, that stuff fascinates me too, is the hunter-gatherers that were in Europe. And I know you've covered this stuff. Hunter-gatherers during the Ice Age and like that transition. And they all seem to be displaced by these farmers that come from the Middle East or something like that, that spread across Europe, Western Europe at that time. Those little topics like that, that's what I was like surprised at your channel, is how you were able to like identify these random cultures. What was that culture in the hunter-gatherer culture in the Ice Age in Europe?
It's one that covered 4.
Man, I don't even know. I don't know that.
Gravettian.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the Magdalenians. I was like, how the North, you just like identify these like cultures, or I mean things that I don't even know about, but I'm a geologist. But yeah, I've never even heard of. And how do you do your research? Do you have like access to peer-reviewed journals? Like, how do you do that? Do you just use ResearchGate and Google Scholar? Or?
Well, a lot of them for like that Upper Paleolithic Europe stuff are pretty like, yeah, you can access them just like that. Also, you know, there's ways to look at journals. I don't know how. I found out pretty recently, actually, there's ways to like look at Locke's journals. I don't know if that's like illegal or something. I have no idea how that works. But yeah, I mean, you can get access to all those papers. What I found tricky researching that is a lot of them are in French or German and stuff. So luckily there's a lot of translating features now that like I was able to read them hopefully accurately. I mean, I hope the translation was good, but I don't know. There's just a lot. There's so much information on like old world archaeology of the Paleolithic. Like it's insane. Like Germany, like the area of like Swabia and stuff is like the most like they've gone to every single cave and every single nook and cranny and looked into them. Obviously not everyone, but they have just so much data and research available that it's like it's easier to quantify like what was going on than it is in like even Clovis. It's just there's not as many. It's just the US is so big and there's not as many people as in Europe and just the sites are not as well, excavated yet.
Cool. So we have plans to maybe do some more content stuff, maybe doing some experimental copper work up in Lake Superior area this summer. Are you still want to do that?
Yeah.
I just heard back I heard from a Delaware mine, and I want to give them a shout out because it's a museum up in the Keweenaw Peninsula. They are doing some stuff they're setting up a new, educational thing at their museum to talk about the old copper culture. And they asked me to come down and check it out. So if I'm up there, maybe if we're doing stuff, you would like to go see ancient copper mines in that area, it'd be like a perfect time to go down there because there's like new owners to this Delaware mine. It's a historical mine. You can go all the way down in like it's like you can go into it. But all around it is old copper stuff. So it could be like a cool place if you're like trying to build footage
Oh, for sure.
some kind of,
They
yeah.
definitely need some footage
It'd
of
be
like large, like copper mines, like just to try to like just put into a little bit perspective how big some of their mines were.
Adventure Mine is another one that has not only the historical, but Adventure Mine might have better prehistoric remains on the above ground than even Delaware. So that's another one. Both of those are open to the public. They're both private businesses that you can go take tours. So if you wanted to go see stuff, you'd have to just ask them to go look on their land. But it'd be really fun, I think, to get up there and check those things out and maybe talk more about different hook technologies and maybe even get out there and try to fish with even not just old copper culture stuff, but get some just metal fishing hooks. I kind of want to test this idea of the copper spoon versus like iron spoon versus like pink color, random colors to see if we could makes a difference. But it'd be hard to see if it actually makes a big difference. Quantify because maybe it's like, oh yeah, the pike are just hungry today, so they're just gonna bite anything you throw in there. And sometimes that's the case.
Yeah.
And when that's the case, then I don't know what we're going to learn from doing that. So, I think that's about it from me. I was covered everything I wanted to talk about with you and your channel, North O2, for people that don't know. You do awesome anthropological, archaeological, geological documentaries with an amazing, soothing voice that you can fall asleep to with no tacky music. Check him out, and I'm sure you'll love his content. And we're hoping to maybe do some more work together, looking at experimental technologies from the past, especially the old copper culture stuff around the Great Lakes. So stay tuned to North O2's channel to see that maybe in the next upcoming year from now. We're filming this in 2024, November. I don't know why I'm looking at my watch like it's a time. But yeah, so keep an eye out for the stuff that's coming out, and hopefully we'll watch North evolve into different projects and greater depths to his documentaries. And thank you for being on the show. Anything you want to say?
I don't know. It's kind of funny to think like this is because I'm going to shout this out, obviously, on my channel. This is probably like the first time a lot of my audience has even seen me. Just kind of hilarious.
Yes. If you're a North O2 fan, I hope I asked the questions you wanted to find. I hope they tune in and see you in person. This is the face for the voice. First time you're going to get to see him, maybe the last. No, we can see you in the future.
But yeah, I guess thanks for watching. And if any researchers, because I feel like you're going to get a lot of more of the science crowd, watching your videos. If you ever just contact me if you have anything interesting or anything wrong with any of my content, tell me that too.
that's a good thing to bring up. If you're the expert in the fields we've discussed and we've said something wrong, please comment on our videos. We will see them and start the discussion. And we're here to learn too. And maybe that'll give us the impetus to look at your show, your research a little bit more closely. So let's start that conversation in the comments below, please. And if you liked our conversation, also hit the like and please subscribe, especially to my channel. North over here is riding with 393,000 subscribers. I'm down there, lower numbers. I don't want to bring them up right now. So if you want to subscribe, that would be great too. Okay. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining me on my podcast. I will talk to you again soon.
All right. Thank you. Bye.